So to create means to originate, to conceive of a thing or idea that did not exist before, combining two or more previously unconnected objects and ideas into something new. Creativity plays an important role in advertising, of course. Remember the goals and purposes of advertising. The work of creatives enables advertising to support these various goals. Can you imagine ads that just presented a stiff mission statement and product attributes in plain black type on white page? That might have worked in advertising's earliest days, centuries ago, but how effective would that non-creative approach be today? Good creative helps advertising to inform by making a campaign vivid to attract attention and by combining the basic elements of communication, words and visuals, into clear messages. Good creative helps advertising to persuade by using a unique character or story, or by highlighting key information through graphics. Good creative also helps to remind consumers about a product or a brand. An innovative ad that sticks in your mind helps keep the brand in your attention. And of course, good creative can produce the boom factor that grabs audience attention. So as you can see, these different roles exist on a spectrum from fact-based concepts to value-based concepts. Will an ad that clearly and creatively informs you about the features of a toaster oven give you a boom response? Probably not. Fact-based thinking focuses on cognitive processes. Value-based thinking, value-based thinking focuses on emotional and psychological processes where boom responses occur. It comes down to two factors, novelty and appropriateness. From the novelty perspective, an ad has to be noticed. In this age of 24/7 media and messages all around us, an ad needs to go boom to break through and get our attention. It needs to say, hey, you. And that boom should get us to stop and think about the marketer's message, initiating that process from awareness to conviction and eventually action. The second dimension of great advertising is appropriateness. An ad may get you to think, but what does it get you to think about? Remember that consumers have different motives for making a purchase. Negatively originated motives such as problem removal or avoidance provide the foundation for informational ads. These ads offer relief from some type of problem. Now, positively originated motives such as sensory gratification, intellectual stimulation, social approval, serve as the basis for transformational ads. These ads use positive reinforcement to offer a reward. So the creative strategy for an advertising program is guided by four components. The target audience. It consists of the primary market, who the company sells its product or brand to, as well as the secondary target public, made up of centers of influence or key influentials. This element of strategy asks, who are we communicating to? Now, the second aspect is the product concept. As we discussed, it's the bundle of values offered to the consumer. This element of strategy asks, well, what are we communicating about? The third element is the communication media. It covers the channels and the outlets where the advertising will be delivered. This element of strategy asks, how are we reaching this specific audience? So the integrated marketing communication message element of strategy asks, what do we want to say and how do we want to say it? And here we're talking about specifically messaging strategy. It's developed by the creative team and is an explanation of the ads campaign's overall creative approach. Message strategy defines what is said, how it is said, and why it is said. The message strategy is guided by the creative brief. Those of you that were in my visual communication course experienced that creative brief. There are three components to message strategy. The verbal component, guidelines for what the ad's messages should say, addresses consideration that affect the choice of words and how the writing relates to the medium or the media that will be used. Examples would be using short, fun words for product targeting to a younger audience, or elegant language for an expensive product geared to an affluent, educated market. How might the verbal considerations differ for a radio spot versus a print ad? When you're doing your radio spots this week, think about the careful choice of the words and how they are going to be understood when you enunciate them, right? The nonverbal component focuses on the campaign's graphics, any visuals that must be used and how graphics relate to the media that will be used. Examples might be using lush food photos for a high-end restaurant ad. And the technical component covers the preferred execution approach and mechanical outcome, including budget and scheduling limitations. And that's often governed by the media choices you're making. And then we have what's called mandatories. And those are things that must be in an ad dictated by the client. Addresses, logos, slogans, etc. So just think about this question. What might be some technical strategy elements related to a commercial for a soda using emotional appeals aimed at a youth market? On the other hand, what technical strategies would reflect a radio spot for insurance targeted to seniors? Because the elements of the message strategy are interrelated, they typically evolve simultaneously. Language affects imagery and vice versa. However, the verbal elements are the starting points for many campaigns. The messaging strategy helps the creative team sell the campaign concept to the bosses, the account managers, so they can explain and defend the creative work to the client. All of us are creative in different ways. Let's look at the different perspectives on the creative thought process. People generally think in two different ways, objectively and rationally. Actually, those are together. Sorry. Objectively and rationally one way, and qualitatively, intuitively the other way. So those who study creativity refer to this as hard and soft thinking styles. Hard thinking covers concepts like logic, reason, precision, consistency, work, reality, analysis, specificity. Hard thinking sees things as right or wrong, black or white, true or false. But soft thinking refers to less tangible concepts such as metaphor, and those are comparisons of two dissimilar things, right? The car is like a racing cheetah, a metaphor. Dreams, humor, ambiguity, play, fantasy, hunches. With soft thinking, there may be many right answers, but also many shades of gray. Which style of thinking sounds more creative to you? Another way to look at human thought processes is through fact-based and value-based categories. People who prefer fact-based thinking break concepts into components and analyze situations to discover the best solution. They like logic, structure, and efficiency. Although fact-based people can be creative, they tend to be linear thinkers and prefer having facts and figures to analyze and control. They're not comfortable with ambiguity. No gray areas for them. But people who prefer value-based thinking make decisions based on intuition, values, and ethical judgments. They're better at accepting challenge, conflict, and paradox. In other words, unequal situations or conflicting situations. Value-based thinking relies on blending concepts together. Value-based thinkers are good at using their imaginations to produce new ideas and synthesizing existing concepts to create something new. So the most creative thinkers lean toward soft and value-based thinking. I imagine that you've guessed that already. But a creative team may need to deal with a client who prefers fact-based thinking. And a target audience may be more hard thinkers or more value-based thinkers. So these considerations help guide development of advertising, both to please the client and to connect with the audience. The end.